Today I'm going to be reading chapter 4, part 2 in this book called To Be Told, written by Dan B. Allender, PhD. God invites you to co-author your future. This is kind of like a informative book, an interesting book. You don't necessarily need it to study from yourself, and yet, it's always good to have a copy on hand. The next part that I'm getting into, I've already read this book. My BTF, best therapist friend, suggested this book to me a long time ago, and I really found great insight in it. It really was actually life-altering for me, Natalie, to fully not step aside, yet move seats to the co-pilot seat in the metaphorical parallel skies, journeys on, such spirit flights that I've created of my own life and living with heaven on earth. This is a really good book, and I hope that anybody who's been following along is able to get what this book is trying to portray. I'm a little bit flustered. I'm the Good Shepherdess here on our small hobby farm, and it started off a freezing morning, and now the sun is out and the temperatures have gone up to, oh my gosh, I think almost 58 degrees. And so the flock has been up and down all day today, cold and then feisty and then bathing, quiet, and then hungry, and the life of a good shepherd. All right, let's dive right into Chapter 4, Listening to What Moves You. I think we ought to only read the kind of books that wound and stab us. If the book we are reading doesn't wake us up with a blow on the head, what are we reading it for? So that it will make us happy as you write? We would be happy precisely if we had no books, and the kind of books that make us happy are the kind we could write ourselves if we had to. But we need the books that affect us like a disaster, that grieve us deeply, like the death of someone we loved more than ourselves, like being banished into forests far from everyone, like a suicide. A book must be the axe for the frozen sea inside us. That's from Franz Kafka, Letters to Friends, Family, and Editors. Whoa, that was pretty profound there. All right. We are what we choose, and we choose whatever our deepest passion compels us to be and to do. To understand the truth of this simple principle, we must examine choice's power to shape our character. A single choice can set the direction of our life. Countless movies and books explore the irrevocable impact of a single choice by imagining what would happen to others if we didn't exist, or if someone traveled into the past to change one choice. It is impossible to foresee the avalanche of consequences that would follow. Yet questions still arise when we consider the choices we make. Is our life determined for us, or is it written with our cooperation? Do we speak to our own condition and therefore write our future? Or are we the elemental cogs in a vast epic of mechanical predestination? We often feel both free and bound. People who like to think they are self-made know that much happened that was outside their control. At the same time, we often feel that we made a decision that had a determinative role in how our story played out. We know we are small, yet our choices have significant consequences for others. We intuit that we are both part of a larger story that is infinitely beyond us, untouched by our choice and design, yet also intimately and profoundly connected to a story that is personal and possibly far more profound and far-reaching than we can imagine. We live in the middle of both realities. We are both powerless and unimaginably powerful simply because we have the ability to choose. Blackie, what's going on, sweet lady? Are you okay, honey? Did you just come to say hi, or do you need some assistance? Are you egg-bound? Blackie, you okay, sister? Oh no, hold on. We are what we choose, and we choose whatever our deepest passion compels us to be and to do. To understand the truth of this simple principle, we must examine choice's power to shape our character. A single choice can set the direction of our life. Countless movies and books explore the irrevocable impact of a single choice by imagining, did I already read this? Oh my gosh, I'm really out of it. Hold on. Pause. Here we are. We live in the middle of both realities. We are both powerless and unimaginably powerful simply because we have the ability to choose. I recall the day my life changed in ways I still do not fully comprehend. It came with a phone call at 7:30 in the morning, a few days before spring term ended my first year in seminary. Someone shouted for me to come to the phone. I staggered out of bed and down the hall and muttered an incoherent, "Yeah?" into the receiver. The voice on the other end said, "This is David Nicholas." I said, "Who?" He replied, "I am the pastor at Spanish River Presbyterian Church in Boca Raton, Florida." I had no idea who he was or what he wanted. His voice boomed, "Look, do you want a job this summer or not?" I flinched, straining my mind. Suddenly his name surfaced as I remembered a conversation with a friend of mine who attended a church in Florida. Without fully meaning to, I said yes to David Nicholas's offer of a job. He said, "Good, be here in a week." I laughed and asked where Boca Raton was, and he said, "Buy a map." How could this happen? It happened, and a story explains how. I had taken in a homeless seminary student named Tom, whose wife had been too ill to travel to school at the beginning of the term. I offered Tom a place in my room, and he stayed with me until his wife arrived a few weeks later. We ate lunch together often and developed a friendship. Toward the end of our first year, I decided to go to Europe to hang out and practice my German. Tom said it would be wise for me to work in a church instead. I found his suggestion hilarious. I told Tom that no church would take me, and he said his pastor was odd enough to take someone like me. I thought nothing about that conversation until the moment I was awakened to answer the telephone. It was that church and that pastor who invited me to the glory of the ministry. It was that church that took me in, introduced me to Larry Crabb, counseling, preaching, and teaching, and opened my heart to the possibility that my life might actually be useful to God. One phone call, one yes that escaped from my mouth, changed the direction of my life. We are the sum of every yes that we utter. I can look back over my life and see a series of yeses that took me to my wife, my calling, and my current labor. But it's rare that we see where a yes will take us at the moment we utter it. When I agreed to go to Boca Raton, it seemed strange and adventurous, but I had no idea it would be the one yes that would radically alter my life. Seldom do we know the implications of our choices. Most of what we do day to day seems mundane, isolated, and lost in the sea of sameness. But underlying everything we choose is desire. It is desire that shapes when and to what we say yes. Why would I choose to say yes to an unknown place in Florida because a friend I met at seminary suggested I do so? It's because I listened to my heart. I was restless enough to head off to Germany with no real purpose, and I was just beginning to see that the gospel is true. My heart wanted something new and bold, and the phone call came right on cue. We often refer to the core of our being as the heart. Our heart is more than our mind, deeper than our will, and truer than our emotions. It is the sum of our being, but even that doesn't accurately measure the totality of our being. There is something in every human being that is beyond our wildest comprehension in its capacity for both good and evil. I can do the utterly unexpected because the presence of eternity beats within me. In a phrase that causes my heart to swerve in wonder, the author of Ecclesiastes tells us that God planted eternity in the human heart. This isn't just pretty imagery. Eternity, a longing for God, fuels our passion. It guides our choices. It sets a course for our life. Eternity pulses through my blood, and its course will never allow me to forget that I will one day stand face to face with a holy, just, and righteous God. I may largely ignore the vortex I'm moving toward, but the law of love, the call to give oneself fully and completely to another, cries out in each cell of my being. So, in light of the pulse of eternity, how do I wish to live? We are all poised to become more of who we are and who we have not yet to become. A yes or a no reflects what we value most and determines the end towards which we will move. All decisions are guided by our projection of ourselves into the future, called our ideal self. We each see ourselves as being a certain kind of person with a specific set of values, beliefs, and dreams. In practice, however, we often are not what we want to be, but instead end up choosing what others expect us to be. This is called our ought self. O-U-G-H-T. Ought self. Avoid it. None of us will ever reach the ideal, but we can escape the ought in order to become what's called a real self. The real self is the one that lives honestly and ably in the middle between the ideal and the ought. I am an aging man who carries more weight and less hair than I did a year ago, but when I look in a mirror, I am usually surprised to see who is looking back at me. I still believe myself to be around 28, thin, with a full head of hair, taut skin, and a happy twinkle in my eye. What I've just described is my ideal body image. All of us have ideals for ourselves in such diverse and countless areas as worker, lover, fighter, financer, friend, spouse, parent, child, citizen, and believer. In each area, we have an image that serves as a North Star to guide us to our potential. And each image has its roots in desire, dreams, memory, and people. Furthermore, we are a complex of choices based on who we want to become. My son, for instance, dreams of being a great lacrosse goalie. He mimics his heroes and spends much of his day in activities designed to help him realize his dreams. He wanted to play football, but I forbade him to do so. I had played for 9 years and had achieved success along with significant permanent injuries, and I didn't want my son to play a dangerous contact sport. He chose lacrosse, and though it has high contact, it is not a constant battering of one body against another. The first day of practice, I dropped Andrew off at school with these parting words. I don't care what you play, but whatever you do, don't pick goalie. Before the first game, the coach said he needed a volunteer to play goalie, and my son stepped forward. I watched as Andrew fielded hard balls thrown at more than 60 miles per hour. I was horrified. He was happy. His choice was not entirely built on thwarting his father's will, but to a degree, his decision was a way of saying, you can limit my choices, but I won't always do what you want. So the path to becoming what we dream as ideal involves a series of risks, compromises, fights, and failures. The deepest passion fuels our ideal. Passion is what makes us feel most alive. For one person, it is reading Flannery O'Connor, and for another, it is watching one's stock portfolio grow. It is not wrong to love literature or to want to make money on investments or to have a fashion passion for both. Our ideal image of ourselves is inextricably tied to our deepest passion. We will not know our true self unless we can name the passions that are tied to our ideal self. Our ideal self is revealed in what we value, passion, how we understand the world, belief, and what we do to reach our ideal, behavior. Our passion, belief, and behavior fit together so intimately that I can say this with confidence. What we do is what we really value. What we value enough to do tells others what we really believe. What we really believe shapes what we will become. My own failures in trying to lose weight serve as an apt illustration. I want to lose weight, but I failed at it for more than a decade. I have lost and regained my excess weight enough times to have made at least 5 new people. I have failed to achieve my ideal body image. Why? Because I value something more deeply than I do my ideal body image. I value the image of a man who is satisfied, full, and at rest. I am more passionate about having a full stomach than I am about being thin. The proof of that is, of course, my behavior. My passion, eating food, good food, and being full is fortified by the belief that I can't control my life or my suffering. But when I eat, I feel good, and I value feeling good more than looking good or being healthy. Therefore, dieting works well until something in life discourages me. Then I discard the diet and start eating. So we always choose what we value most, even when our choice does us harm. We won't change our behavior until we first recognize what we value most deeply, and then honestly face how our passions reinforce what we really believe. We can change our beliefs, but doing so won't alter our behavior until our beliefs transform our values. We can change what we do, but the changes won't last if our values and convictions are not transformed. Each of us can begin the process of transformation by wrestling with these questions. What moves me most deeply? What do I most enjoy doing? Where do I find the greatest pleasure and joy? What is it about this activity, this idea, this person that brings me such a sense of life? Our passions moves us to choose one path over another, and it is as unique as a fingerprint. Our passion may be to cheat death by taking huge physical risks, or it may be avoid suffering by choosing to avoid dangerous people, situations, and ideas. In either case, we have an ideal that we are constantly measuring ourselves by, and how we measure up results in either disappointment or joy. Our sense of who we most deeply want to be also runs headfirst into what others think we should be. Our ideals often get suffocated by the expectations of others. To continue the illustration, I may have an ideal body image that I never achieve because I don't want to suffer or I have no time to exercise. And the reason I don't have time to work out may be as simple as I'm too busy doing what others think I should do. And who are these infamous others? They are those who have helped form my character through the various roles I play. The word character originally referred to as a stylus or a tool that makes a groove in a piece of wood. A character came to mean whatever is marked or cut by a stylus, the pattern that an artist has carved into the raw material. Likewise, initially we are marked by the most dominant and influential people in our life. However, their marking can't fully form us without our participation. In fact, we adopt others' expectations of us by making them our own. Ultimately, though, our role is cut by God. Our parents may have a huge hand in shaping our character as we either conform to or defy their desire. However, God orchestrates all of the influences in our life to blend a symphony of themes that reflect His purposes. The role we choose is written by God, but acted out by us. In this role, we have the privilege of co-authoring the script and ad-libbing on stage. Yet God, by His creative force, imbues this role with its parameters and possibilities. He chose our era, our place of origin, and our family, the shape of our bodies, our level of intelligence, and the stories that precede us. We are not bound by what is given, nor are we free to ignore it. Our role emerges from what we experienced in our first stage, the family. Our initial role in life arises in the matrix of what is required and what is possible. We fall into a family in a certain birth order which sets up standard options. A first child will be more responsible and ambitious than the second. The second will be sneakier, more watchful, and less pressured than the first. We each develop sensitivity to our own unique set of passions. One child will know that she bears the responsibility to succeed. Another will know that his role is to bring laughter and joy, while a third will be responsible for taking away the family's shame and failure by being the scapegoat. It is difficult and often unnecessary to renounce the role that we play early in life. In fact, the role we are shaped to play is one after profound redemption and revolution. We are meant to live out in the future. We should not hate and eschew the training we gain on the stage of family. Instead, we should explore it because it is our earliest clue to our future name and calling. So we live out a role, or we live according to a set of expectations of who we are and how we will engage with others. The role we play is both given and found. I had the role of being the translator or the messenger between my mother and father. My father was a profoundly uncommunicative man. He would often say to me, "Go calm your mom down. She's upset with something I've done and she needs to talk." It was my job to provide her with perspective. After she described the quarrel they'd just had, here was the problem. The perspective I offered might get Dad off the hook, but it would make my mom feel guilty and unloved. On the other hand, if I chose to side with my mom, then I had to convince my dad of the legitimacy of her hurt. It was a no-win world, so I found solace in books and even more in the staggering power and glory of words. In words, I found a yes. In fact, it was a divine yes that brought comfort and offered the hope of transformation. In the midst of words, I found my deepest sense of pleasure and passion. Where we find our passion and the things that stoke that passion will eventually become part of our character. But what might your role be if you were the child of an opinionated and contemptuous parent? Instead of a translator, you might become an accommodating listener who serves as the amen corner, simply parroting the views of that dangerous parent. What might an accommodating listener become over many years? One woman who had been deeply intimidated by her angry mother became a gentle and kind presence for others. She knew the pain of being small, and her stance toward others was to enhance them whenever she could. The problem was that she was often too frightened to tell others the truth. Therefore, she was limited in her ability to give love. Our role in our family of origin was given to us more than it was chosen by us. But we honed and perfected it as a means to save our families and in turn preserve ourselves. The role we are given is often predictable and well-defined, but we seldom act it out in a mechanical fashion. Instead, we customize the role to our way of being. So which is it that really moves us? The ideal self or the ought self? The answer is obvious. We live in a state of constant compromise between the two. We sacrifice what is ideal for what is required and vice versa. Most of the time, it is nearly impossible to discern which self most deeply moves us. Am I losing weight because it is healthy, or because I will feel better about myself according to some general notion that defines an attractive male form? We're not free to do entirely what we want because we're all people under obligation. The person who thinks of no one else is a narcissist. On the other hand, if I live with nothing but ought, then I am only what others have required of me. I'm a soulless sycophant. What moves me should be the passions that God has written into my story, even if I don't fully understand what they are or why they exist. I must find them so I can become real. If you want to find wisdom about life, it's often best to read some of the great writing found in children's stories. Exactly. What does it mean to be real? Marjorie Williams tells us in The Velveteen Rabbit. What is real? Asked the rabbit one day. Does it mean having things that buzz inside you and a stick-out handle? Real isn't how you are made, said the skin horse. It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. Does it hurt? Sometimes, for he was always truthful. When you are real, you don't mind being hurt. Does it happen all at once, like being wound up or bit by bit? It doesn't happen all at once. You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't often happen to people who break easily or who have sharp edges or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off and your eyes drop out and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But those things don't matter at all because once you are real, you cannot be ugly except to people who don't understand. So what really moves us? In light of that passage, it's whatever we love. If I love the feeling of being full, satisfied, and content, I will love the ease that any false god-like food can provide. Why am I more motivated by the soothing satisfaction of a donut than I am by the thrill of working out at the gym? The answer in part is because donuts require less risk, suffering, and loss than a 30-minute workout. And I love what takes away pain and suffering more than I love what is true, good, or lovely. I'm called to be real. I am real. If I have been loved, and I know love to be better than sorrow, stronger than death, truer than any spin, real is not an ideal because I'm real only after all my parts have been worn off. Real is not an ought because the role I am to play is not expected. Instead, it is a gift given by my Maker, even if it was at first the markings of my parents, family, and culture. Therefore, it is my responsibility to first own what most deeply moves me, and then to live it out for the sake of others. My passion may be working on cars. It might be making delicious and nourishing meals for people who are too overwhelmed by life to cook. It is my task to know what moves me. How, then, do I decide whether to take up playing a musical instrument or enroll in a Spanish course to prepare to go with my church to build homes in Tijuana? Or is it time to struggle with my weight by joining a health club? The church is offering training for a small group leaders ministry. Should I get involved or concentrate on spending more time with my kids? The rubber meets the road when a potential yes means saying 1,000 no's to a legion of legitimate choices. If I learn Spanish to go on a series of short-term mission trips, I will have to say no to many other attractive opportunities that are bound to come along. Key to making such decisions is identifying our greatest pleasures. What is our desire and passion? We find the answer as we read our tragedies and see where our character finds the greatest pleasure. We are meant to say our core yes to our most central, well-contoured passion that draws forth and reveals God's beauty. And we are meant to say no to that which has brought about the kind of harm that we can do something to stop. God has crafted our character and given us a role that will reveal something about Him that no one else's story can reveal in quite the same way. I worked with a woman in her 60s who grew up in a Black Hills area of the Deep South. She was born into an illiterate Pentecostal pastor's family. This family suffered sexual abuse, alcoholism, and violence for more than one generation. This woman's abuse was so deep she seemed destined to be swallowed in the mayhem. Her story involved so much loss and shame that it brought deep pain just to hear her tell it, let alone imagine what it must have been like for her to live it. My work with her was brief, but I am privileged to see her periodically at conferences. Today, this woman is a brilliant and gifted therapist. She has battled to rescue hundreds of other delicate souls that were poisoned by the bite of abuse. She is a warrior, a saint, and a wild, hysterically funny, shrewd, kind-hearted woman, and I was privileged to be a small part of her walk toward embracing beauty. All I need to do is close my eyes to see her face. I can hear her laugh, and I know what I am meant to say yes to in my life. I don't recall ever asking God for the privilege of working with traumatically abused men and women, yet that is what I do. I don't believe God hands out our callings like an army quartermaster dispenses a uniform, rations, and a gun to a soldier. God invites us to follow our passions even when we are unaware that they exist. My character was formed in the midst of family violence, tension, and heartache. I came early to the calling of translation and intervention. God called me unto a family and a story of heartache, violence, and oddity. I am called to care for the angry, abused, broken people. And I do know joy, the divine yes of God, in the rise of redemption from the hidden, dark, shame-filled waters of abuse. What would I rather do? Amble about life with little purpose other than seeking comfort, or engage in my divine yes and no, even if doing so brings heartache? It's a choice, just as in the Matrix, between the red pill and the blue pill. One will quiet you and let you sleep through the terror of this world, while the other will awaken you to be a warrior fueled by the passions and redemption. You and I are meant to know the rush and the arousal of redemption. It matters little what problem, population, or place you tackle. It only matters that something in your soul pulses with eternity to join the cast of characters that ventures to create glory and beauty out of the ashes of the fall. It is redemption that lures you to say yes. Redemption is not narrow or limited to what some call full-time Christian service. Redemption, freeing of the soul and the body from death to life, loosening of injustice, assaulting disease, growing of crops for the hungry, comforting the dying, teaching a child to read, delivering a warm greeting to a neighbor, helping a child tie her shoe. It is all about saying a divine yes to glory. And for each of us, there is a script written that is contoured to our deepest passions, that reflects our core character and our truest calling. We are written to be real. And there is something in every heart that knows when we are and when we're not. If we are willing to study our life, God will give us signs and clues as to our calling. If we will read our story, especially our tragedies, then we will be better understood what forms our passion, and we'll be better prepared to be real as we say yes and no. What is your passion? Even I have to think about that. It's important whenever reading books like this, for me anyway. Well, I just write in my book, you know. That's why they say get your own copy. I'm writing notes all the time in here. I really do love redefining such words that appear in such books that I read that I already know the definition, and yet without being a but, it is important to redefine such simple words of life because they do hold different meaning in our own different stages and phases of life. When I was 12, the word manifest, I didn't even know what that meant. I was like, what is that, a teacher's book? Chapter 4, to be told. Tomorrow will be chapter 5. Thank you.